Well, thank you again for agreeing to participate in Hub's virtual summit, specifically as panelists for how employers are supporting employee financial wellness. My name is Janine Moore. I'm Senior Vice President for Hub Retirement and Wealth Management in Texas. It's been great getting to know each of you. I wanted to take a brief minute to introduce you to our guests. George Lance. George serves as Old National Bank's Rewards and Talent Strategy Director. George has been with Old National since 2005 and has served in a number of roles, including HR Business Partner, Compensation and Benefits Manager, Talent Support Director, and Training Director. The company is very big on financial wellness and has put some innovative programs in place, including the One Wish program, where employees can donate to help coworkers in need, along with sliding scale health plan premiums based on income. Thank you, George, for joining us today. Next, we have Sion Michael. She is the Benefits and Retirement Administrator of ATPCO, also known as Airline Tariff Publishing Company. They provide the world's leading technology, pricing, and shopping data to airlines, global distribution systems, travel agencies, and tech companies. Thank you, Sion. We're glad to have you. And last but not least is Jared Hamilton. Jared is the Human Resources Director of Calvetti Ferguson, a boutique CPA firm with 130 employees in multiple offices across the state of Texas. Jared joined Calvetti Ferguson after relocating from Kentucky, where he led benefits for Southern Star. Jared, thank you so much for joining today.
Great to be here.
So we're going to get right into it. George and Sion, you have a very large employee base to reach. So we're going to start with, what does the term financial wellness mean to you? I'm going to start first with George.
For me, financial wellness really is personalized to individuals. And in my mind, it has some key components. One key component certainly is understanding the basic concepts and having good knowledge and education around that. In addition to that, from my perspective, I think it's really having people and team members feeling very comfortable and able to take care of whatever their regular everyday needs are, including emergency needs, because we all know that throughout the course of life, things always pop up and they're unexpected things. And certainly those are the types of things that can derail people very easily. So people being able to take care of those become a very important thing. And then it's really, there's a personal piece of this in my mind where it's everybody's desire and where they want to be and where their plans are, and preparing for and planning for where they can be and want to be in the future. And, holistically, if you have people who are able to take care of those components, and really you're at a point where the level of stress that they have related to their financial needs isn't overwhelming them and allowing them to, or taking away from their ability to focus on important things, then in my mind, that becomes an individual who's financially well.
Especially through the past pandemic, it's just been very, very important for people to have that emergency savings. So thank you for mentioning that. Sion, what does financial wellness mean to you?
I agree with George. It's very individualized. We at ATPCO feel that financial wellness is not just about the numbers. It's about having your finances under control, right? So it's in the short term and in the long term, having achievable goals, and sometimes having a conversation with an advisor, a professional to help you get there. Believe it or not, we have 5 generations. We have people that have just come out of college, and we have people that are at the age of 72 still working at our organization. So everybody has different needs, but whether that means paying down college debt or retiring on your own timeline, buying a home, etc., saving for college, having the proper tools and the education to be able to leverage what it is that you have, the company match. But in our case, it's also the agent services match that we provide our employees. So having a knowledge base to work from and trying to convince the millennials that, this is something that you want to invest in now. People who are just coming into the workforce as well. So I think it's a broad-based, strong financial foundation to have adequate resources and funds available to the employees, so they're not living paycheck to paycheck, if you will.
Thank you, Sion. Well, we're going to move now and talk a little bit about the relationship that you have with your advisor. So, Jared, I'm going to put you on the spot. Talk about the relationship that we have and how did we keep employees engaged during the pandemic?
Well, first of all, as you listed off all those things that we did during that, I just don't know what we were thinking, I mean, frankly. But I think, in hindsight, as I was listening to that, I think what was probably integral about what we were doing for our employees is we didn't stop. And I think that was important for them to know, is where a lot of the world was kind of stopping to catch their breath or not sure what to do. We had a plan we put in place before the first case of COVID hit the United States, and a testament to you all, to Hub International, is we kept going. We didn't stop. We had a plan to transition late in the spring and the summer, and there was no reason not to keep doing it, even though with the changes in the stock market, I grew a little panicky about going into a blackout. But you talked me off the ledge there a couple times. But I think that's the most important thing that we did, is we continued on with the strategic plan we set in place. We knew it was right. We knew it was the right thing to do for the plan for our workforce. And I think continuing to do that, not letting the unknowns that didn't necessarily have a major impact on the next 40 years for our employees from a financial perspective, that we continued to do that. And not only did we push forward, which gave the employees a sense of, okay, hey, wait a minute, we're still moving, because we water dropped it. We had a drip campaign about the change. But not only that, we followed through with digital educational sessions where we had over right around 95% participation in those educational forums where Hub and Empower came in and reached out to each employee, so they felt some calm and some peace and really some excitement about what we did with the plan and the enhancements we made. So just for the sole fact that we continued to move forward, make progress, and then reach out and engage them in a positive way, I think was the best thing we could have done amidst the pandemic. When there was so much uncertainty, the voice was one of certainty, which meant a lot to them. And I think that was just a fantastic time to experience. I wasn't this like silver lining guy at the time, but hindsight, it was great that we got to walk through that together.
Thank you, Jared. I think adversity brings you closer, and I definitely feel like we have each other on speed dial for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. So, Sion, I know you've had some really fun engagement with Joe DeNoyer. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with him and his team?
Yeah, so I joined ATPco in 2017, and that's when we hired Joe and his team. And we were willing to take risks. We were willing to look at this with a fresh pair of eyes. As you've stated, ATPco has been around since 1954. Mm-hmm. So they already had a very well-to-do retirement plan, but we both thought that the education was going to be something that we're going to bring to the forefront, not just to people he affectionately terms the red zone, 55 and older, but to our younger population, and knowing that as time went on, we would be hiring more and more people that are coming from right out of college. And we have an internship program with high school students and college students. So we offer the college students an opportunity to get that same type of education that a person in mid-career would get in terms of the retirement plans and participating in a retirement plan, understanding what the benefits are. So I think ultimately education. So we partnered together to be able to offer one-on-one financial planning meetings with our advisors. So Joe and his team would come into the office and or do virtual visits with our employees that we've enjoyed for a few years. And really having conversations with people who weren't participating at that time and trying to talk them through, well, what could we do to help you through the various bottlenecks? And that discipline over time what has happened is it not only brought engagement, closer engagement, but there was a relationship and a trust that was established between the advisor, the employer, with the employees.
Awesome. Thank you. I know when I go into some of my clients' offices, they don't remember my name, but they do remember I'm that 401k lady. And I'm quite
Yeah.
sure you have that same relationship with Joe's team.
Yeah, and it's always booked when we have our 2-day sessions of the advisors coming in. When we were in the office, those meetings were booked, and now virtually we've just moved into that space.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, we're going to move now to some top issues that you see with employees in relationship to retirement savings. And George, I have you up first. So what kind of issues are you seeing across your population when it comes to retirement savings?
Yeah, good question, Janine. Retirement savings for our team members, we have the benefit of a lot of auto functionality we've built into our plan, which certainly helps with our auto enroll and our auto escalation.
Mm-hmm.
And we see good participation at 98% of team members that participate. Mm-hmm. Probably where you see challenges at times with our plan are really where people might not always fully understand all of the concepts. And there's a continuous need to educate and help people learn and understand all of the pieces of the plan. Because, in our organization, we have 2,500 team members across multiple states. And you have people who are working on a daily basis as a banking center team member, doing banking transactions, all the way up to our executive population. So the level of knowledge and input just is so varied. And so sometimes it's really just helping team members understand the key concepts and really bridging that gap and making sure we have good tools in place. Fortunately, we have really great partners, right? Mm-hmm. We work with Sheridan Road, and they help us think through a lot of educational pieces. And we work with Principal Financial Group, who certainly has some great educational pieces that are good in partnership with us. And we build that in with good education around enrollment. We use benefits, a virtual benefits consultant. We use Alex and Jellyvision, mm-hmm. and have a retirement piece that's built in so that team members not only get the information they get with enrollment, but they get that to help them out and make retirement information a little more fun. Mm-hmm. Certainly at any point in time throughout the course of a given year, we see team members, despite our best efforts, who are just challenged because of personal situations. And that's just a normal piece of life. People are at all different levels in terms of where they are to be prepared for savings. Some people are challenged, with a couple of $100, $1,000 of expense if you have auto repairs that need done. But you see sometimes those types of things that derail people. And, so that's at times a challenge for us, which is why we have certain programs in place like our One Wish program to help people out when they're in times of need. And team members can make recommendations and referrals for those individuals that they see that they're working with that are facing some challenges. Certainly there's always a budgeting and a planning piece to that too. And, we've been very focused on education and have put together educational modules to help team members understand the basics of budgeting, with our thought process being that if team members have a good understanding of that, then they're better able to help clients when they're working with clients because they don't have those financial stresses and they understand basic concepts.
Those are great ideas. I'm not cutting you short, but I'm thinking there's a lot to expand on there. And yeah. I really appreciate that. I think that ties in really well with the question, do you think the majority of your plan participants will retire on time with enough money? But Jared, could you address that? Do you think majority, with all the stuff George named off, the pressures of the world, and the fact that not everybody makes the same amount of money, not everyone saves the same way, do you think the majority of your people will retire on time with enough money? And if not, what can we do to help them?
It depends on the definition of enough, right?
Yeah.
That's the key.
Well, stats usually say between 70 and 90% of current income would be the enough. But it of
Right.
course depends on how you want your lifestyle to look.
Yeah, and I think that actually coincides with one of the top issues that I see also is, enough in regards to, are you appropriately planning for change? I think change is one of the top issues that's coming up, that none of us have a crystal ball. So, when we're talking about enough, when I'm looking at enough, is it enough that I can live my lifestyle that I do right now? So at the age of 44, 45 or whatever, but what I think we have to do a better job at educating our folks on is, your lifestyle right now will not be your lifestyle in 30 years. Your lifestyle in 30 years is going to be, there's going to be a lot more doctor visits. There's going to be a lot more medication on average. I'm not saying that, Janine, you're probably never going to have to take prescription. But I think there's something to plan for in that regard, that it is going to be change. I mean, there's where does Social Security come into play? Where does Medicare come into play? Will they look the same? We have no idea what's going to happen. So there's got to be this gray area where we're okay talking about, listen, what things are like now, your mortgage and your expenses and your doctor's bills, it is not going to look the same in 30 years. So that is why we put these statistics there of 75% of what you make now. Because, by the way, what does that mean? We assume you're probably not going to have a large mortgage, right? Because you either downsize or you paid off your house. But if you maintain this level of spend, that's a problem, because you have medical care. So I think change is going to dictate whether or not people have enough. Personally, my firm, I think that the majority of our folks will, just based on, the types. We're a public accounting firm, and just the demographic. I think the majority of our folks will. I think the education has beefed up from financial advisors and employers. We used to not have conferences like this. We didn't have panels talking about education. We have that now, so it's a little bit more in the limelight, which is where it should be. So I think a majority of people will retire with enough, but their definition of enough now may have to change in 30 years.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with that. And the other thing is, we're catching them at a younger age. Especially in your firm, you've got a lot of young kids coming out of school, and we're getting them in right away at the right number.
Gotcha.
Whereas when maybe we were starting, we didn't know what that number was.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Well, Sion, what advice would you give to a peer who's interested in growing their plan participation to look like your plan?
Well, I would say sky's the limit. And continue to partner. So one of the things I did was I leveraged Joe Denoyer. I understood that he was in the business for 30 years, and he came with a huge amount of experience lobbying on the Hill. Like, there was just so much plethora. There was a plethora of knowledge that he came with. So every time I sat down with him, I would go over my ideas and tell him what I was thinking about doing and how to engage our employees. Because one of the things that I noticed is a lot of the statistics were saying that the millennials and the younger population were not investing, and we were seeing the same thing originally when we were hiring them. So I wanted to know, okay, well, what's hindering them from this? So having those conversations. So I think it's important that you, as an employer, begin to establish a relationship of trust, right? And it happens over time. And your employees want to know that you have their best interest at heart, right? So you're not just out for, numbers per se. You really care. And so I think we've done a great job at ATP Co. letting our employees know who have been there 20, 30, 40 years, and employees that are just coming into the marketplace that we care. And here's some education. Here's some tools for you. Talk to me about how are you planning to pay for college, your tuition loans and stuff that you have out there with Fannie Mae or what have you, and just having that conversation. And so creating a space for that, be it virtually or in person. I thought about doing a wine and wealth event when we were still located at headquarters. So I would definitely suggest that. We did it right at the Washington Marriott, which is right across the street from our offices. And a lot of people came out, and we touched on financial wellness, as well as the 6 steps to retirement. So we tried to engage people where they were and give them the tools that they needed and give them that encouragement too.
Thank you so much, Sion. You know, this year has just been such an interesting year in that we've learned how to navigate the virtual landscape, right? So now we understand how to engage people virtually, and they're getting used to it as well. But we always want to get better. As advisors, that's what we want to do. So I'm just going to go around the horn if I could start with George. And if you could answer for me, how can we as an industry support you better as a plan sponsor?
It's a good question. I think the team does a great job supporting us today. Education, knowledge, just helping challenge the thought process. At least in my role, and I can't speak for Jared or Sion, but I'm pulled a lot of ways on any given day. And certainly we do our best to try to stay very in tune and upfront and very familiar with all the pieces that are important to drive success for people. But to have somebody who's a good partner, who's helping you think about things, who's challenging your thought processes, who's helping you work through those tough things that you're thinking about, that's as important as anything. The technical knowledge is all there, right? I mean, anybody can look at the technical knowledge and understand it. But having somebody who's really pushing you and challenging you and just making you think differently about things, that's as important as anything.
Thank you, George. Jared, what about you? How can we be supporting you better?
Oh, that's a tough question because you guys do so well, but I'll answer it constructively. I think it's important to know that, and we've obviously met before, and I know like George's workforce is much different than mine, and I think it's a critical piece, and that's what we found in Hub, that you guys actually understand the differences. So it's not going to be a cookie cutter, product type of, hey, have you thought about this? You guys do a good job of thinking about the type of workforce that you're potentially offering that to. And I think that's important for any financial advisor to understand that, it's not just brick and mortar and this is our group and, another client. These are a group of people, much different demographic, much different set of experiences, much different regional location, where are they at in their journey? And I think you mentioned it, right? You already knew it by heart. You're like, well, you've got a much younger workforce because they're coming at, that. Mm-hmm. So that's helpful that financial advisors actually know kind of the landscape of their clients. And I think that's vital right now in where particular companies are, whether or not they got an older workforce that's closer to retirement. So they need to talk about maybe a different investment strategy or what's going on. With that, do they need to talk about the Social Security transition and do they file or suspend, or do we have to educate those? My 28-year-old associate is really not interested in a Social Security webinar. So I think you guys do a good job of that. I think that is extremely important. Continue doing what you're doing with the education, reaching out, over communicating, flooding me with emails. Let the employer determine, hey, what best fits. But, understanding who we are as a firm is probably a critical piece. I think you guys do a great job at, and always look for ways that you can improve on that.
Thanks, Jared. I think he's referencing the fact that when we were going through the first throes of COVID, I was throwing a lot of information out there just because I was trying to get my head around it, and I wanted my plan sponsors to have the same thing. So thanks for bearing with all those emails. Sion, how about you? How can we as an industry support you better?
Well, I have to agree with George and Jared. I mean, you are obviously a great partner. During the pandemic, the changes for us is that we couldn't be like everyone else. We couldn't be on site. So understanding that the communication has to kind of change, if you will, right? So and what I noticed with Hub is that they had a lot of education, seminars, webinars that our employees could attend about the market volatility to ensure them this is for a season, this too shall pass, especially those of our employees that have larger fund amounts were concerned. So they were very instrumental in providing us with news articles and webinars. So I'm big on education. I think that the more information an employee has during times like those, and knowing that they could pick up a phone and call Joe's team, because they've seen them in the office. They know who they are. And then for those who are newer employees, right in our new hire orientation, which I conduct, I share with the new hires that this is an available resource to you, no matter where you are in your employment journey, your career journey. So I think you guys are doing a great job.
Well, thank you so much. I really have enjoyed getting to know you, each of you better, and Jared especially, our time together over the past year. I just want to thank you for taking time today to do this panel, and I'm sure we'll get plenty of questions, but please reach out to your individual advisor with any additional ways we can support you better.